Yeah, started. Okay, so we discussed both single bus organization and multi-bus organization, so that you will get an idea of how going with multiple bus in what all the way it is an advantage is one, and how it reduces the number of control signals required, and how the number of clock pulses is getting reduced, and invariably it increases the speed of the operation or time required to execute one instruction. Complete instruction execution means including the fetch phase as well as the execution phase. How it is shortened, all that you can understand when you look at the control sequence of single bus organization and the multi-bus organization. Okay, so then now the discussion supposed to be in any of this. We know that the control signals need to be enabled at the right clock pulses. For example, if in case of any instruction during fetch phase, we know that these are the set of control sequence control signals need to be enabled, like PC out, MAR in, Y in case of single bus. So we know that these are the default signals need to be enabled during the T1 clock pulse of any instruction, right? Same way, if we take add instruction, for example, if it is add R1, R2, R3, we know that during the execution phase, R3 out, R2 out should be enabled, and add signal should be enabled, and then after addition, Zn should be enabled, and in the next clock pulse, Z out to be enabled, and then store the result in R3, then R3 in should be enabled. Like that, we know now in what clock pulse, what are the set of control signals needs to be enabled. So we learned till this how the data flow is required and how we have to design the data flow. And when we change different design parameters, like instead of single bus we go with multi-bus, how the design changes, all that. Now what we and we know the set of control signals also needs to be there for every instruction execution. Okay. So now our discussion is supposed to be based on all these information. Your data flow unit is ready and you know how it should be controlled. So the next step is the design of the control unit. Okay, based on the requirement and the control sequence for the available data flow unit, we need to design a control unit. Okay, that means control unit is nothing but generating different control signals at based on the requirement, right? The requirement may be based on the external inputs, like you receive signals like some interrupt or memory complete indication. All these are the external inputs, and then based on the instruction, right? We know that the control unit needs to generate different control signals, right, at different point of time in the right sequence. So now what we do is we design the control unit, right? So for that designing the control unit, you can do it in two ways, right? One is the hardwired control, completely of hardware design, like how you design the digital circuits for various requirement. Okay, and the other is the micro-programmed control, where you can generate different control signals based on not completely based on the hardware, but you require the hardware, as well as we can reduce the amount of hardware required and can bring in some flexibility. Okay, that's the another way of doing. Okay, so generating the control signal, we do it in two ways. One is the hardwired control and the other is the micro programmed control. Okay, So we start with hardwired control, completely of designing a hardware circuit for generating different control signals depends on the instruction and what clock pulse and what is the status of the external inputs and the flag bits. Based on all these informations, different control signals needs to be enabled and we have to design the circuit for the same. Okay, that's the hardwired control. Hope you guys are clear with this motto. Clear, or you want me to explain once again? Okay, so like I told you, this will be the basic control unit setup we can set, right? And there will always be clock invariable of whether it is synchronous circuit or asynchronous circuit. When it's synchronous circuit, every control is based only on the clock pulse. When it's an asynchronous circuit, not of that sort, you can have additional control signals also, or you can enable and disable any particular operation, not necessarily to be based on the clock pulse. You can based on other inputs also you can plan it. So here also, to define the speed of the operation, we have a clock, right? And selecting the clock will be based on how long you need, how much time you need to complete each and every operation, right? And your basic clock should be whichever operation takes more time, that should be your basic clock here, so that in one clock pulse, whatever operation you expect to be over, you get sufficient amount of time for it to get over. Okay, and the control step counter will tell you whether it's the first clock pulse or second clock pulse or third clock pulse, so that you will have an idea of what set of control signal needs to be enabled at T1, what set of control signal needs to be enabled at T2, and what set of control signal needs to be enabled at T3. For example, in T1 you will be enabling PC out and MAR in, right? And at T3 you will be enabling MDR out and IR in. Okay, so when you know what clock pulse it is, you get an idea of what set of control signal needs to be enabled. This is only one input. Okay, again, what set of control signal you enable depends on other factors also, like what instruction it is, right? And what is the status of the external inputs, right? If memory function is not at over, then you cannot go for enabling MDR out. Okay, and other conditions, in case of branching, you require the status of the flags. Okay, so based on all these inputs only, you can generate the corresponding control signals, right? So every blue line you see here are one control signals. For example, this may be your PC in, right? And next blue line you see may be your PC out, right? For example, I'm saying this need not be in the same order. Okay, so this can be PC out, and next can be R1 in, and next can be R1 out, right? And of course you will have the end control signal, which is actually the trigger pulse to initiate or reset the counter, so that counter again starts from T1, where next instruction fetch takes place. Okay, so all the control signals we need it from the control unit. Okay, where we have a set of decoder and encoder to perform the remaining operations. Now our main focus is based on the instruction we receive from the instruction register and what clock count it is, and then based on the external inputs and other condition and status flags, what is to be inside this encoder and decoder, how we design this encoder and decoder, right? So that we get what we require here. We require here are the different control signals based on all these situations, okay, based on all these inputs, right? So these are the statuses what we are having, the inputs, and this is the required output, okay. Now all that you need is what is to be inside this digital circuit, where from these inputs how you generate these outputs. It's so simple as that, okay. You have a set of inputs and you know when what output to be enabled based on those inputs. So you simply design a digital circuit to achieve the same, okay. Are you clear with this basic information? Okay, I'm going when somebody is saying yes, but if someone have some doubt, please raise it then and there. So like I told you, it's just the combinational circuit that generates the control signal. We know that these are the outputs needs to be enabled at what time, and these are the inputs, and based on those input status, what output needs to be enabled. So what we have in the control circuit is the combinational logic to achieve the same thing, right? You can write a truth table for any of these control signals when it's supposed to be 1 and when it's supposed to be 0. For example, if we take 1 as the enable or active and 0 as the disable or deactive, okay. So you can write a truth table when PCN should be 1 for these are the set of inputs. For what are all the conditions of these, PCN should be 1, and for what are all the conditions of this, PC out should be 1. Like that you can write, come up with a truth table, and then based on that you design the combinational logic, okay. So it is not such a big deal, right? But what is your job is, as an engineer, you should make it very effective as much as possible. When we say effective, we are not supposed to compromise on the function. At the same time, we have to ensure that no more minimalistic is possible in the design you are giving. That means whatever you have done, there should not be a possibility of removing even a single gate, right, without compromising on the function. That you have to ensure. That means you have, if you are able to do that, that means you are with the absolutely right and perfect design of the spec you are given with, right? And you know, in digital logic and in every engineering solution, multiple solutions are possible, okay. So naturally, as an engineer, your duty is to find out the right one and ensure that that's the optimized solution, okay. So here we just come up with a detailed representation of whatever we discussed earlier, right? You can find out the same clock and the control step counter, right? And then the instruction register, then the external inputs, right? And the condition codes. Only there are few expansions and details added. That's the one. You have seen this instruction decoder and encoder as a single block there, okay. Whereas you are seeing further little more details brought into a light. That's it. So from the instruction register, the opcode you get, right? You give that opcode to an instruction decoder to find out what instruction it is, right? For example, if the opcode you represent with I am with the understanding that you know the instructions are represented with the binary format, and if it's a 32-bit instruction, each bit in the instruction has its own defined function. My assumption is right or not? Yes, anyone respond please?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, because I know that you have completed a microcontroller, right, where definitely you would have learned the instruction format. Okay, so if it's a 4-bit opcode, then you know that there will be 16 different instructions you can represent, right? So you just decode and find out what, based on the combination, what instruction it is. Okay, so same way here, from the instruction register you take only the opcode, and you also you are supposed to know that the instruction register will be conveying not only the operation to be carried out, it will give you the sources, it will give you the destination location details, and then some conditions if required, and some additional functions, like whether you want to save the flag bits or not, those kind of settings also. Okay, so the instruction decoder simply decodes, just a decoder, right, not something very special to it, just a decoder. Whatever combination you give here, it decodes and enables only one of this line, right? So it's the engineer who actually decodes, right, not the decoder. The engineer who actually decodes and find out if this line is active, we assume that it's this particular operation. If the second output is active, we assign it to another one operation. If the third output is active, then we assign, for example, if we assign the first instruction to addition, maybe the second instruction to subtraction, maybe the third instruction for increment, like that the engineer assigns, right? That is, we people, right, we assign that each one of the interpreted output should be assigned for what operation. Okay, so same way here, the step counter gives you whether it's first clock pulse or second clock pulse, third clock pulse, fourth clock pulse, like that. But to generate the control signals, here we cannot give the count directly as such 1, 2, 3. Okay, it should be a signal so that directly we can interpret. So we go for a step decoder, right, to enable T1 signal if the count is 1. Okay, so if the number of bits here are 3, the number of outputs you get here will be 8. Okay, and if it is the combination is 0, 0 or 0, 1, 0, then T2 gets activated, like that we assign. Okay, now based on this, now we know it's T1 clock pulse, one signal is going to be active. If it is a T2 clock pulse, another signal is going to be active, and if it is T3 clock pulse, another signal is going to be active. Okay, now based on what instruction it is and what clock pulse it is, we know these conditions. Okay, and we also discussed the control sequence, so we also know how to how to write the control sequence for any instruction. You will be definitely able to manage, right? And once we know what control signals needs to be enabled for what instruction at what clock pulse, as well as here we know what is the current clock pulse and what is the current instruction and what are the additional inputs. Now based on all this, we design the encoder, right? Take all the inputs and then we say which of these control signals needs to be enabled. Okay, and like I said, every instruction last control signal is end, which is going to be the starting of the next instruction, where the counter reset and starts from T1. Okay, so naturally at T1 you would have already defined that these are the control signal needs to be enabled, so it automatically goes into fetching the next instruction and starting the execution, right? Till the end control signal occurs, run will be there to increment the counter every time. At every clock pulse, the increment happens here. right? Every time it gets the clock and it's simply run, the counter gets incremented, and either it will be run or reset. So on getting reset in the next clock pulse, the counter will be reset. On getting the run on the next clock pulse, the counter will be incremented. Okay, are you clear with this, or just take 1 or 2 minutes to understand this, because next will be forming the circuits for each of the control signals. So only if you understand this, you can understand that better. And you have any doubt, please raise it now. Once you have gone through it, please let me know so that we can proceed.
No, I think we can proceed.
Okay, thank you. So when we set the clock pulse here, right, the duration of the clock pulse, I've already told you, every clock should be of non-overlapping time slots, that is one function over, and then only the next clock pulse starts, or next step begins. Okay, so based on that, and at every clock pulse, how much time has been required for different operations, based on that, based on these two things only, we decide on the clock pulse how long a clock pulse is supposed to be, depends on which takes the maximum time to complete, because in one clock pulse, whatever operation we are planning to complete, we have to ensure that we give sufficient amount of time for that operation to get over. Okay, so always the time when you fix up, you have to ensure that it is long enough to complete the operation you have defined at that particular step. Okay, and same way, number of clock pulses required for different operations also varies. For example, in case of add, we already discussed that there are 7 steps in the control sequence, so it requires 7 non-overlapping time slots. And in case of branch, it requires 6 non-overlapping time slots, right? So depends on the instruction. Naturally, when you get to the end control signal, that will be reset. Okay, but when you fix up the time slot, we have to ensure that it's sufficient enough to complete the operation, and no clock pulses are overlapping here. T1 clock, if we take, all operation in T1 clock will be get over before we start the control signals of T2. That's what we say here as the non-overlapping time slots. Okay, so here all this we already discussed based on what the control signal needs to be enabled, and here some control signals listed out like Y in, PC out, add, end, all that. Okay, so based on these set of inputs, right, we as well as in what clock pulse it is, we generate all these we design a system to generate all these control signals, right? When we complete the design and implementation of generating each and every control signal required in the system, the control unit design is over. Okay, so there is one simple control signal generation we are going to look for. For example, if you take Zn, can you people tell me in what are all the condition we have to enable Zn control signal at what clock pulse and for what instructions? when we enable ZN control signal for what instruction at what clock pulse.
Ma'am, for program counter we have to enable ZN.
For program counter, you mean at the T1 clock pulse during fetch phase? That time we enable YN, right? Not ZN. We enable YN and for after increment. Okay, yeah. After increment, we enable ZN to keep the incremented value. Yeah. That happens in the T1 clock pulse. Okay. Maybe I go to the control sequence so that you can understand. Yeah. So this is for one instruction where you can see ZN has to be enabled at T1 clock pulse, like rightly pointed out by Kishore Kumar, where ZN needs to be enabled at the first clock pulse. And we know that the first 3 clock pulse control signals are same because it's just the instruction fetch, and the control signals required are same for all the instruction fetch. Okay. And other than that, you can see that at T6 clock pulse of add ZN is required. That is add from one address in indirect memory location, right? ZN is required. So for add at T1 and at T6, it is required, right? And T1 for all the signals, I mean for all the instructions, because it's just the fetch. And for add R3, R1, where it's indirect memory address, that case at T6 ZN is required. Okay. And if you check out the other, instruction, again branching without condition, ZN as usual in all the T1 of all the instructions it is required, and at Z4 of branching, right, it is required, right? Same way, if you look at the condition, I mean branching with condition, of course at T1 invariable of what instruction it is, and then at T4 for both branching it requires at T4, whether it's condition branching or without condition, it is required at T4. Okay. So like this, you have to trace out when ZN needs to be enabled for all the instructions. You have to trace out and come up with the expression. Okay, and then go for implementing that expression. So for example, in case of end, if you take in branching at if n equal to 0, it needs to be enabled at T4, and if n is equal to 1, it needs to be enabled at T5, right? But for other instruction, end is enabled at T5 here, and in the add, I think it's at T7. Okay, so you have to trace out which control signal needs to be enabled at what clock pulse in every case. Okay, that we have to trace out. So ZN invariable of any control signal, I mean any instruction, it is required at T1. Okay. And we also have seen that it is required at T4, invariable of whatever branching it is. So any branching, whether it is with condition or without condition, for both it is required at T4, right? And then it is required at T6, I think, for add instruction, right? Is required at T6 for add. It's supposed to be AND with add instruction, right? It is required with add R3, R1 indirect addition. Okay. For other addition, it may be required at other clock pulse. Like this, you have to list out. This list will keep on be added with till you cover up all the instructions you have planned for that instruction set. Okay, and then you go for implementing this expression. If possible, you reduce it, reduce the expressions, otherwise you implement it as such. Okay, so you can see that at T1 Zn has to be enabled invariable of what instruction it is, and then at T6 for that particular add it has to be enabled, and at T4 for branching with condition, without condition, any type of branching it's supposed to be enabled. Like that it will be keep on expanded. Okay, so here once we have the expression, then implementing it will be a simple work, just an AND and OR logic, where even that decoder circuit, decoder and encoder and the control unit, if it is completely of AND and OR logic, you can replace it with the programmable logic arrays, with the PLAs. Okay, where a single IC will be enough to implement your entire control unit. Okay, so this entire decoder and encoder circuit you can replace with the AND and OR logic, right? Where your control unit design will be over with single readily available off the shelf component, right? It's very important, because you go for, if the component is not available off the shelf, then designing itself will be consuming a lot of amount as well as time. Okay, that's why our processor costs are all so high. You are not paying for the processor, where maybe the manufacturing will be cost one single processor, small processors, manufacturing or production may cost you 50 paise to 5 rupees maximum. Okay, but we pay in hundreds or thousands for the design, right, and the time spent on, where a VLSI engineers has to be working for years or months to come up with that design, routing and all that. Okay, so design cost is what we pay. We are not paying for the manufacturing or for the production, right? So hardwired control naturally very it's if you come up with a single component like a PLA, it will be a very robust design, because single IC not a problem. Even if it goes off, you can replace it very easily, right? And the hardwired control allows you with operate at high speed, right? But since it's completely a hardware based design, very little flexibility is there. You want to go for upgrade or do some changes, you have to change the complete, you have to bring in the hardware modifications, right? Not like software where the hardware can remain the same, you just upgrade it. That won't be possible, right? So if the instruction set is small, your design will be very simple and straightforward. If the instruction set is very large instruction set you are planning to offer, then in that case implementation will have a lot of limitations, right? And your circuit complexity will also be there. Okay, that's the advantage, as well as the first one is the advantage, and the next two are the disadvantages which you find in the hardwired control unit design, right? So from here, if you have any, just take a minute. I think you have a minute time. Just have that minute to go through how do we come up with the expression for each and every control signal, and how do we implement, right? Just recollect, and if you don't understand any part, please raise it now. Is any doubt you have? Any of you?
No, ma'am.
So I can take Kishore's word now. Okay, so if you have some doubt, any of you, we can revise it once again in the tomorrow's session before we go with the next design, because that's based on the microprogrammed concept of control unit design, where you are supposed to be clear in both the designs. Okay, that's the major part of your syllabus, where after you started from the number system, I mean how just a brief on how the evaluation, and then started from the number system, various number systems possible and its advantages, how do you process the numbers. We learned all that to come to this major of designing the complete system. So where we started with the data flow unit, and then we now evolved into the major part of the design, that's the control unit design. Once you are able to come up with the data flow unit and the control unit design successfully, then all you need to provide is the interfaces wherever required, depends on the spec and the requirement of the application, and that's it. We'll be with the complete system design, right? So this is one major part of your design segment. So you have to be thorough with it, right? So we'll start, we'll just brush up this once again before we start with the next control unit design, right? So I think we are done for the day.